Welcome to Sex Ed. Okay. We're now going to learn about this method. In the beginning, God had been everywhere. In order to create the world, she first had to hollow out a space inside herself. Into this space, she put the world. This Kabbalistic theory is called Tzimtzum. That was an asterisk from earlier. Okay. As the world grew, she withdrew herself more and more. She withdrew to the point that she was nearly imperceptible to her own creations. She would have become completely imperceptible if, in her wisdom, God hadn't left us a map to herself in the form of a collection of stories. If you look close enough at a droplet of water, you will see the entire universe inside of it. Just so with the Torah. As in life, God appears less in each chapter of the Torah than in the one before. In Abraham, she appears mostly as a disembodied voice. In Isaac, she is hinted at but not seen. And by Joseph, she is glimpsed only in dreams. God's vanishing is so gradual that we hardly notice it at all. She is letting us adjust, bit by bit, to the dark. For only in God's absence can we begin to comprehend her love for us. Only then can we see her in ourselves. And the story behind this little small section is that this book is an adaptation of the book of Genesis, and I divided the book into 3 long chapters with the creation story at the beginning, and then kind of the epic of Abraham and Isaac as the second one, and then the third one being Jacob and Joseph. And between each of the 2 sections, I put a small interlude, and this was an interlude between the first and second sections.
We loved it. All right, well, thank you guys all for coming out tonight. Full disclosure, I was raised Catholic and I don't know anything about the Bible, okay?
Does that like track your Catholic?
Yes, I think so. Anyone here Catholic? Oh, they don't want to admit it. They're cowering.
How do you have fun? What do you read?
I know. No, you are forced to read, obviously, forced to go to church, and but it's mostly built with shame, and scariness. So I have a lot of questions around that. So, like, what is your relationship, or what was before the book, your relationship towards Bible, Torah, especially like as a kid? Because for me, I was like, it's just absolute fear of going to Catholic school, K through 8th, terrifying.
Yeah, I had fear not of the Torah, but of just being bored, I guess, but like at synagogue.
Oh, being bored.
Bored, yeah.
Okay. I was bored all the time, yeah, sure.
But it's hard, I've been kind of figuring out how to describe my relationship with the Torah. It has to do a lot with who my parents were, and then who I was raised to be Jewishly. My parents were raised something called modern Orthodox. They were very educated, and they went to yeshivas, but it wasn't particularly hardcore. It was kind of like a cultured form of relatively religious Judaism. They grew up around here, and like right here.
In this building?
Yes. I don't think they're here now. And they left. And I was raised, so then they left. They became slightly hippie and slightly city, like career-y, and then they found each other and got more Jewish again, but not quite as Jewish as they used to be. They became a brand of Judaism called conservative, and they sent my brother and me to Jewish schools, but not to yeshivas, to a slightly more less religious school. Still somewhat religious, but we were like the more religious people in our school. We kept kosher, we did Shabbat, we were taught to read Torah and stuff, to sing the Torah on Saturday. But in my parents' growing up, it was not fashionable to care one way or another about God. It it was just the cool thing to be like, we're religious because of the community and because of the history, and like it's kind of like icky to think about God. So I've said before that that's how I was raised in our synagogue and school, but I think it's more something my parents passed down to me. So read the Torah at school, kind of loved it. We were a text reading family, and complicated. I didn't like school. I loved the Torah. And I never thought one way or another about God.
Okay, so yes, that's fine. It was my mother with religion. It was more like just in case baptisms. You know, you're like, we don't know, so you get them baptized, but it's like all like a tradition.
Like all in the water, or just a sprinkling?
I'd have to go back to some serious documentation to find that one. I'm not sure if I must have got it as sprinkle though.
A baby or all your life?
Babies. No, it's a I don't know, this is the thing with Catholics. It's like, are you religious?
Do I know any other Catholics?
Yeah.
I should know these things.
It's a ruse. But so your earliest memories of the Torah are that you liked it.
Yeah.
You were like, I'm into this book.
I mean, not like youth group into it, but like
That's a level to
Yes.
be youth group into anything.
yeah, like deeply not. I did have to go to youth group, and I will never forgive my parents for it. But I'm not kidding.
No, absolutely.
But we learned it at school, and like that's the one. It's not like I was like the kid raising her hands in class, and I
Sure,
of course
but
didn't
it
like
sat with you a lot.
Yeah.
Do you remember like what were your first like big takeaways? Like of like this is this thing that's like really resonating with me?
I'm trying to think about that. It was kind of like learning it at school was hard. I never liked school. It was always this big class, and you went through the Torah like at a crawl because you were reading it in Hebrew, and
Sure.
I think we learned like one sentence of Noah in a week in third grade, and,
Yeah.
and our teacher just made us keep going over and over it because we kept making noise. Yeah, what we're trying.
It's okay, I'm just asking random
I
questions.
remember memorizing the 10 Commandments in 6th grade and being very proud of we had a very mean old school teacher, but it was really fun to memorize something. Not that I believed in them, some of them.
It was about the task, really, at
Yeah.
the end. Yeah.
It was fun, like, just saying the words and stuff. I never really liked singing the Torah. I didn't like being in front of a crowd. But I don't
And yet
know.
here you are.
Always like, I'm not singing.
Not yet, Liana.
But I always liked the character of God. I remember drawing God in middle school as like this cloud with like a really stupid smile, probably very inspired by Roz Chess cartoons at that point.
And that's what God is in this book. He's still a cloud with a stupid smile, you know?
No.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
No.
I read it. Okay. Imagine if I didn't. It'd be funny. Okay. So what is it that in your later years, what was this, when did you first have the idea of like, I think I need to rewrite the book of Genesis and make God a woman?
It was so I wrote a book 2 books ago, was a graphic novel called Passing for Human that was a memoir about being a woman and being an artist and like kind of wanting to be exactly like your mom and not being able, no one can be exactly like your mom and you have to kind of break away, and kind of complicated book. I hadn't quite figured out what I was trying to say, and I think that's kind of a powerful place from which to write a book. And the way I had interludes in this book between the chapter of which I just read you one, I had little interludes in that book between the chapters that were about my mom and about me, and those interludes were all taken from the book of Genesis, and they were all with a
I
few
don't know
that.
that.
Yeah,
Who here read Passing for Human? Just a round of applause, obviously. It's an incredible book. So it was you had pieces of the book of Genesis in Passing for Human in a way.
Passing for Human was really collaged together. I was a pretty green bookmaker, storyteller, comics artist, all of those things. Those are all kind of things you really need to learn and get comfortable with. So I kept starting, like thinking this is the beginning of it just flowing. It doesn't just flow to tell a long story unless you're very lucky and you have exactly the right story that you need to tell. But so I started and ended up with, let's say, 10 pages of many different stories, and I ended up splicing them all together, and this was one of the starts.
Okay.
It was a totally straight, like, adaptation of the King James Bible. I just put the text in there because I figured it was, honestly, because I figured it was not copyright.
Absolutely, you have free reign, for sure.
But as I was working on this book, I realized I couldn't draw from a very Christian version of the Bible because I didn't know, like, it's not my point of reference.
Mm-hmm. So then how different did it feel in writing versus, writing something like Passing for Human that is practically a memoir, very, very deeply personal, and then transitioning to working on this next book that is something everyone knows, and translating, and how did your processes differ in that way?
That was the goal for me, or the idea for me was to draw on something everyone knows. As a cartoonist that you need to kind of find something that your readers all understand before you start making fun of it. So I thought I could do that with a book that everyone has heard of. It turns out, like, no one has read the Bible. So.
No, that's what I was saying. I was like, asked the hostess, and I was like, do I need to read the Bible first? Or like, how am I gonna really prep?
I recommend, if anyone loves audiobooks, the Robert Alter
audiobook of the Bible?
It's great. It's
Is
read
it?
by
Okay. I feel scared already.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool though. No, it actually is absolutely riveting. And
Some
scary
of
though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, another surprise to me is, like, I've read the Torah, but I think I kind of reverently start reading it, like, let's say once a year, and I don't get past the first third of the book of Genesis, and I forget that God really leaves the book of Genesis. So I added this, like, withdrawal section to explain why my book stops being about God, because ostensibly it was supposed to be about this God character who really was easy to write. And my other goal in writing this book was to write something easy that just came really naturally to me, and this character did, but 2/3 of the book are not
I
about
love
her.
how sensitive she is. I'm not sure who here has already read the book, but she's deeply sensitive, and I likened her to being basically a freelancer. Like, I came out of that, I was like, God's a freelancer, and she's having a hard time getting from job to job, and people are calling her back thinking she's a man, and she's hiding behind her computer, and
That's
she's
so
sad
funny.
about it.
That's
I don't know
so
if you
true.
saw that, but I was like, she's freelancing. It's
That's
hard.
really funny.
Yeah.
I thought of her as a child, but
Yes. No, she is. And soon they will. Child. They're okay. But okay. So you she's a child. But what?
she's me.
Yes, of course,
Yeah.
of course.
And I'm
But
a
I
freelancer.
loved how her feelings are so deeply hurt over and over again by men.
Yeah,
and
'cause she
so
likes
there's also
men.
this kind of duality going on of, like, it's just a woman just being hurt by a man
Yeah.
throughout the book.
Thanks. Yeah, you're getting it. Thank you.
I read it twice. What else did I want to? Okay, so I was curious, and my notes are on the back of I drew a bunch of naked women, so just ignore that. They're drinking martinis, but that's how I did it.
I see that.
They're
Okay.
just,
Thank you.
yeah,
Those aren't
they
objectifying.
won't end up in, this is, I was watching Survivor, okay? Okay, do you think that writing this book, and then maybe I'm totally wrong because I don't know when you actually wrote the book, but do you think it had anything to do with you becoming a mother?
Yes.
Because I thought so.
Yeah, this is actually, I think, the first time in doing publicity for a few weeks that anyone has asked me about
Seriously?
that. Yeah, and I appreciate when people don't, but it's very, but also, like, it's the
It
main
is
thing.
just part of your life now.
Yeah, making this book was part of my reason for wanting to make this book was kind of as with Passing for Human, is to think about being a woman and an artist and where the intersection is between motherhood having or being is with being an artist for a woman. Or for
It's
me.
a terribly complicated decision when it comes to the idea of labor and what it takes to labor through your work and the time that it takes and everything. But like when I finished your book, I remember I texted Sophia, who's here, I was like, this should be in every children, like first grade. I wish I had this book in first grade because it takes like these huge scary ideas. Again, for me, I was obviously terrified in Catholic school, but your book makes everything so much more accessible, and for me, everything felt more real, and like moments of beautiful and like I was saying, like God's a child, like a lot of excitement and joy, but also just taking like stories that just kind of seemed like I'd never understand them. You just like turn them on all of them, but I want to know. Okay, and this is where I might sound stupid. Did the name Lilith? Is that in there, or
No.
did you give that name?
I didn't give it, and I'm gonna sound stupid, I don't know who gave it. I think it was the Jews. I think it was
The Jews.
rabbis.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
might have also been Christians. I don't know
Okay.
enough Christian stuff, but like it's way after the text of the Torah was written. It was a story made up to explain why, because there can't be a mistake in the Torah, of course. Like
Sure.
to explain why there are two stories of the creation of Adam and Eve, and in the first story, man and woman. In the first story, man and woman are both made from earth, from clay, and then the story just starts over again, and Eve is plucked out of Adam's rib,
Right.
made out of Adam's rib, which is plucked out of him, and the rabbis explained this by saying there were actually two women. The first one was named Lilith, and she was a bad partner to Adam, so she got
broken up with really
banned.
fast.
Yeah.
I know, but I love that first imagery of like that there was the creature of the day and the creature of the night, and her name was Lilith, and like of course I was like, okay, Frasier's ex-wife, like
never seen Frasier.
and then she is painted that way, like it's like Lilith is like she's like this horrible woman because she's cold and she's fierce and she's not loving.
Is her name Lilith?
Yeah, that's what's.
Oh,
Oh no, that's why I
yeah.
said that. Sorry.
Yeah.
I do think about Frasier often though. But I'm like the
Why is his
name
name
Lilith
Frasier?
clearly has a lot of meaning that I don't know about. But those images are really beautiful, and that Lilith of course becomes the snake, and then there's this kind of feeling
But
of like
that's
that's
not
not
in there.
in- okay.
Although I think some painters of Renaissance painting have made that connection.
So you
I
added
decided to do it, and then I Googled to see if people have done it in the past, and I think there's a precedent for it.
There must be the name because the name and other Liliths out there kind of have that.
A snakiness.
Not good woman. But there's, I lost my train of thought, sorry, the Lilith, and then, but there, I mean, throughout the whole book, there's this idea of like how a woman's supposed to act, and like, and then I loved all the scenes where like God is feeling bad that there's a man crying, like she's like, oh no, you
Yeah.
poor thing,
Yeah.
and now I have to change everything so to make your ego feel better.
Yeah, she's like a mom. She's also like, I think I was thinking about my way of being in relationships, which I think has a lot to do with being an older sister of a younger brother. You kind of, like from the time you're really young, you just think that finding a boy to like has to do with finding a smaller boy who needs your help.
Sure. He's lost.
Yeah, exactly. And I've really tried hard to not lean into that in my life, but anyway.
It's a dating show now.
Yeah, I hope no one I dated is here. I'm sure they're not. Yeah. So
Well, I can see a lot of your just older, like, just Instagram art coming through in
Yeah.
this book. Like, a lot of your old sort of relationship dating cartoons
Yeah.
that we all know and love are very present in a subtle way in the relationships that are playing out in this book by a lot of the women having to always ask for forgiveness or to humbly sit in the corner. Like, is it Sarah that has to act like she didn't have the baby and everything, and like is Sarah the one that waits forever I'm getting the
yeah,
characters mixed up.
yeah, and that's in the Sarah
Yes.
waits for Abraham. So in the Torah, I don't think it was Sarah waiting for Abraham
Mhm.
to have a baby, although of course she was. But I made it very explicit that so the first chunk of the book is in the past tense. The second chunk, the Abraham chunk, is in the present tense.
I love that too, like that Abraham is just like an asshole artist in
Yeah.
New York.
Yeah.
Perfect adaptation.
Yeah, I was thinking of different kinds of artists, and I was thinking of God as kind of a Ponyo figure,
Mm-hmm.
who's like this little girl who just is bursting with the joy of creating,
Mm-hmm.
but also very self-judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
And then since God kind of leaves the story in the Torah, I had to make a new main character, and the best I could do was Abraham, and he does to me seem like kind of a hybrid between like Philip Roth, like the male artist.
Yeah.
Sorry, Gideon. I don't love Philip Roth. I respect Philip Roth. He's not writing for me, but he's like this very. So I relate to him in a lot of ways. He's like the artist figure I've been fed as a kid among many other very single-minded men who make everything wait until they can make their masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm cross between Philip Roth and like my Papa Yank, who was like a very nice, like kind of boring, very, very good man who like read the stocks in the paper. Like, so Abraham is very savvy in business. He's kind of like plotting, like he dots every I.
Yeah, he's waiting to get the big gallery show to become the
Yeah.
famous artist, and like if this is what God told me to do, so everyone will stand by until I am the greatest.
No, the real Abraham is like, I'm going to pay for this cave in cash, and I'm going to pay exactly what it's worth. Like he's just very punctilious about business deals, and it's like, why am I reading this? I don't care. Like, it's kind of like it reminds me of, my grandpa was very responsible and kind and good, and like I wouldn't really want to read his biography if he weren't my grandpa.
Saturday, I thought yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the real Abraham. My Abraham is more Philip Roth, so he's and I relate to this. He's a monomaniac. He does not want to let life in until he finishes the thing he wanted to finish, which was getting a gallery show. But God has spoken to him, and he thinks that he will be this great artist, but it turns out he's misunderstood God, and meanwhile he makes the love of his life wait to have a baby with him till she, as a biological woman, is too old to carry.
Yeah, it's a great part of the book where he's like, turns around, he's like, I'm ready for a baby now.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm 50. Like, why don't I sat here
And
with
he's
you.
like, come on, trust in God.
Yeah.
God will do it for
I
us.
know, and
Yeah.
then like, oh, and then she's pretty. You're like, oh, okay. Or did that baby come out the arm?
Yeah, the
babies
baby
came out a
came
lot
out
of
of
different
Abraham.
sections.
I cut out Hagar. I feel really bad about it. I cut out lots and lots out of Abraham. It was just too long.
It's good to be succinct. But I really appreciated that you did this wonderful blend of like modernity, and I loved all the talk about cities too, and
Thanks.
when Rachel, I think, goes to the city for the first time and she can't believe how beautiful it is, and that like it's a very old story, but to take it into people are going sub, what you doing, like that, it made me laugh very hard.
Thanks. I replaced Canaan with New York City because that's kind of my promised land.
Yeah, and then the Manhattan being
And
the
then
Garden of
it really
Eden, I was like, this is
disappoints
great.
you. I mean,
Yeah, of course,
Really.
always, everything does.
Yeah, especially now.
Yeah. But my favorite, I just have a few like just favorite drawings. I loved, of course, when he goes to sacrifice his son and when the knife comes down, and then you wrote KitchenAid.
That's my favorite part too.
I
I think
screamed.
the copy editors didn't get it at first.
They did. How do you not get that? Oh.
It might be wrong. It might be wrong.
It made me laugh very hard, and I think there's several of those like perfect comedic gems throughout the book where you bring in something so whatever it might be, 2022, into this old situation, and it's deeply, deeply funny.
More like 2018.
Yeah, everything before the world died. But what is there, oh my goodness. I like the drawing of the woman eating the apple, that was fun.
Thank you.
Oh, that was, did you really think God would want a cucumber salad? That made me laugh very hard.
Thank you. That's what I have.
Do you like cucumber salads?
No.
No?
Yeah, I have trouble with cucumber and vinegar. And
Yes, disgusting.
Yeah.
That's fine.
But I like cucumbers on their own. But not like really mixed with things.
Yeah.
But yes, I had Cain growing a cucumber.
Yeah.
And Abel being a shepherd,
Yeah.
which he was.
You know, yeah, very accurate.
The cucumber is not accurate, but
Again, I didn't read the Bible. I'm kidding.
Cucumbers figure in, like, I think we're in a Christian, like,
Christian-
didn't
a
Saint
Christian
Jerome
food?
have possibly a cucumber?
I have
Did-
no idea.
Did Jonah have a cucumber involved?
Someone could Google it.
There was something, and I think some say it was a cucumber.
But
There
you
are
write,
cucumbers coming out of Egypt. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I wish I could tell you. Okay, but you write at the end, in your author's note at the end, that you actually don't even consider yourself really religious or in that way. So that was interesting to see at the end of like, here's this whole thing, and then you're like, I really enjoy the book, but like I actually don't really feel very religious, and I'd love to hear you kind of talk about that.
Yeah, I think I don't. Like, I loved reading the Torah for this book. It was so meaningful, and I loved engaging with God. I still can't think whether I believe in her or not, but religious to me, in my mind, means going to synagogue once a week and doing Friday night dinner and being part of a community, and nothing against it. It's just never really stuck for me, and I feel really bad about it. I don't feel like, like I have my world. I feel bad about it, and I think that I think I'm a product of my family having come to America and gotten to live in America and do American things. I think I find American things more me than Jewish things. I just do. It's just how it. I feel a little wistful, but it's how it is.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's uncommon. You know, I think a lot of people our age that were raised in religion find themselves. Obviously, there's plenty of people still that they're religious, but I think a decent amount of us find ourselves like, I appreciate the tradition and like that's cool, but like it's just not a part of my life, and it's really hard to feel like it could be. You know?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard because I don't know. I feel like my religion is kind of a nomadic. I don't know how many other Jews feel like this, but I feel like we're a nomadic people, and if we let go of our culture, then it will disappear. I feel like it's kind of more important than I am. At the same time, I want to live my life.
Yeah. Really held on to it. Okay, fun question. What's just like your favorite? What do you think your favorite like joke in the book is? Like any like cartoon, any like frame where you're like, that's hilarious.
I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I felt good about the jokes in this book. I set out to write a book with jokes in it, which I hadn't done in the past. I think you need to be relatively comfortable with the form. You have jokes in your book. I was really impressed. Yeah, you did good.
That's huge for me.
Which I loved and recommend very, very much.
Oh, thank you, Liana.
I'm trying to
Do you
think.
think
Maybe KitchenAid, but
KitchenAid is so funny. I respect that decision.
there might be, like, in the early creation, I felt, I loved writing that first part where God's, like, just has this magic wand and she's, oh, I like when she's, like, holding a whale and she's like,
what do I name it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was funny to have her holding a whale. That I like scale. I like funny scale.
And like bring down the elephant. And you're like,
Yeah.
what's this? And he's like, elephant, I think.
But what's weird about putting jokes in a book is you have to edit a book so much. You have to do so many versions of it, and jokes don't last for the author, at least if you're.
Yeah, it's not funny anymore. I read it 40 times.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
felt gross about all the jokes in the book.
Well, we like them. We like them and we need them. I liked after they like ate from they ate the apple and they come in. She's like, "Am I fat?" And he's like, "I'm fat too."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and they are.
yeah. You are fat.
And then God is like, they're like, oh no, they became like me.
Yeah.
It's a very coded, like, mom giving her kid eating disorder.
Yeah, that's a classic. That's
Yeah.
a classic. So okay, here's just a fun editorial question. There's 12 blank pages at the end of your book, and I was convinced they had meaning. I was like, these 12 pages are saying something to me. They're blank. Am I supposed to fill them? Like, they want me to speak back to the text. Okay, get some ideas going. And then back there, I was like, why? And you're like, yeah, I don't.
Yeah. And there also aren't enough blank pages, but like to separate the actual end of the book from the author's note and the author's note from the thank yous. However, I apparently signed off on this.
Yeah, it happens in the middle of the night in a fever dream. You signed off on it?
Yeah, I think I had just given birth, but
Yeah. During the birthday.
all in all, I'm like amazed by how good a job Random House does with printing. It's not something I take for granted. I had an earlier book with a different publisher, and
As
it
we all,
really,
the
really
horror
meant to.
stories of the first publisher. I've
Yeah.
never seen a dime from my first book.
Oh, did you get an advance?
No. Listen, if you're a young artist, I was very young and didn't know what was going on. Oh well, here I am. But that can happen.
I didn't know that could happen.
That's, yeah, okay. I feel bad now. No, I'm kidding.
Was it like an art publisher?
Yeah, it was just like this little shitty thing in Pittsburgh, and like no one had ever offered me anything. So I was like, it was like the first year I started drawing. So I was like, book? Yeah, sure, I'd do it.
My first book didn't get published, and I took a year off college to rework it in case they would take it. Like they'd offered it, and then they ghosted me. And that was a small art publisher.
Rude. But now you're at Random House, so everything's okay.
Everything's okay.
Sort of, at least.
Yeah.
How do you feel? I'm going to bring it back to another thing because on your Instagram, the work that you're generating lately is like I think I've felt a beautiful transition in your work, just because it's your cartoons are about your day-to-day existence. And how do you feel becoming a mother and motherhood is this is new, is changing your work?
It's changing every minute. It's so hard to put it into words. I guess what I want to say is, all in all, it's like, I don't know if everyone has this experience, but I got a lot more fear stories than like It's Wonderful stories. I know the fear stories are to counteract the It's Wonderful stories that apparently everyone else is being told. But compared with what I was told, it's been pretty easy and really amazing. And also, it is hard. I have 6 hours a day to myself lately. I've been splitting. My parents help out for 12 hours a week, and besides that, I'm splitting childcare with my husband completely 50-50. Earlier on, it was a lot more me, but even now that things are relatively better for me, I have 6 hours a day to myself, and that includes a jog, and I'm technically working full time, and
it's really hard.
It's hard. Yeah, it is hard to find time. At the same time, I'm not lonely anymore, and it's really novel feeling to not be lonely. I really miss parties, and I miss my friends, but I hadn't seen them for 2 years before I had the kid anyway.
Yeah. What does it matter? But I think that and then this goes back into the book of God finding a balance, finding that balance of becoming a mother. She's creating this thing that's now causing her problems, and then she wants to work more on it, but does she have can she even handle it? And I think that I don't really know what I'm saying now, but there's a lot of just interesting stuff of woman's work in the, when Lilith comes back out and the woman is sleeping and she's like, Abraham knows God's a woman, but he's afraid to say it to you. And it just feels just really profound, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it was hard for me to figure out like why God would be, it came very late in the book that God is pretending not to be a woman.
Okay.
But the joke about Abraham naming God like Jehovah with, I don't remember if that word was in there, but like old man with a beard, that was a funny, I kind of let the jokes lead the story in the book. And it took a while to figure out the puzzle of like what happens after did I say Abraham, after Adam names God a man?
She suddenly was a man.
Yeah, she's kind of like divided. It's like a woman pretending to be the idea of an artist that we've been told to be. And I feel like that now, like I feel like that as someone with a 6-month-old trying to still do my work, it just seems absurd. It has seemed absurd to me since the moment I got pregnant that it's just kind of expected that as a career woman you have to really downplay the pregnancy and the baby in your life instead of being like, I'm sorry, I'm only going to be sending 1-word emails for the next year because I'm holding a baby and he's like literally typing on my keyboard because I'm not going to be sending emails during the 4.5 hours I have to do my actual work every day. The actual
drawing and the processing of everything,
Yeah. But and I don't know, it's just been really interesting to navigate and like that we're so, like you're so expected to not tell anyone you're pregnant for the first 3 months, and that's partly to seem normal, and that's partly to seem normal for your
job. It makes me think of the movie Baby Boom.
I don't watch it.
Oh my, no, it's old. It's old.
Is it good?
It's incredible. Yeah. Diane Keaton is given a baby.
Okay, I'm watching.
And she's like the opening of the film is like J.C. Wyatt is a serious career woman, and she's speed walking down like Manhattan to like get to her big serious job, and she's very like in a suit, and then a distant cousin dies, and then she's given a baby, and then the stuff that happened, everyone, of course, chaos. It's the 80s too, so like.
It's still the 80s.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Only in bad ways.
Yeah. But the way that she's supposed to hide the baby at work and everything that like happened, you should watch that movie.
That's what it feels like, but at the same time, like I do feel like having a baby isn't making me a worse worker, it's just making me a different kind of worker. I'm much worse with a deadline, a very quick turnaround, but I'm much better with thinking deeply and refusing to make anything dishonest. And
how many drafts of this book did you go through?
This book, I made more drafts than I'll ever be able to make for anything until my kid is grown up. A lot. It was very, very, very hard for me to figure out how to tell this story that I assumed would be all about God and is actually 2/3 not about God.
Yeah. I mean, as you say, she does go away. She does. She actually loves the ghosts of the men. She goes, I'm going to talk to you for years.
I know, that's one thing she's good at.
Yeah.
I'm not good at.
She nails it. Yeah. It's so great.
That's true.
I think I'm happy to open up. Do people have questions? Oh, you're lying. Come on.
I feel like I recognize a lot of you, but I actually don't know who a lot of you are. Yeah.
Classic.
No, but I really know I recognize a lot of you, but I'm not quite sure I do. Like I definitely recognize 2 of you.
Sure, at least
my brother.
No questions? Oh yes, over here.
You're known to us as a cartoonist, which is the shortest form of sort of storytelling, and you've also written books that are long form storytelling. Do you do both at the same time? How do you balance the short form and the long form? Is one sort of escape to the other? Would you recommend someone that works in long form to do short form, that kind of stuff?
That's a great question.
Yeah, that's a good question, and you're exactly right. I do think of one as an escape from the other. I divide, I can't really work on both at the same time, but I divide my week usually, which is harder to do when I'm deep in something that I'm not quite, for some reason when I'm deep in a story, I can't get out of it enough to think quickly and make cartoons.
Yeah.
So that only happens at certain points along the way, and when it does, I either submit bad cartoons in the New Yorker that I hate making or resubmit old ones. And I'm still not sure why I can't come out of that mindset. It's kind of like you're a fish in the winter and your heart rate slows to the pace of the story you're trying slowly to tell.
It's real. When I was writing, I couldn't think of gags to save my life. Like, gags were gone.
Could you like talk to your? I also can't meet friends. Like I do, but it's everything is torture.
I don't have that, but I get it.
What do you think it is?
I don't know.
Is your brain just?
I think you
in
just
the
you. It's
book?
like it's the muscle memory of like when you're thinking about the book all the time, gags rarely occur to you. But then I had this thing when I finished Murder Book, I was so excited to get back to gags, and I was like, I have like 400 ideas. You know, like they've been sitting back in your mind for a while,
Yeah.
and it could all come back out.
It's really different paces of work,
Mhm.
and gags do very well when you give them a little rest. It's strange that people are career cartoonists because it's not something you should have to turn out week after week for your entire life.
Every week, ton of the funniest things you've ever heard of.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
But not laugh out loud funny.
It's very subtle. Any more questions? Yes, in the back.
I'm curious about your drawing style. Like, I wonder if it's evolved kind of since you began drawing in general. Like, I wonder, has your style evolved, or have you kind of always drawn in the same style? And like, how has it changed? That's what I'm curious about.
I remember talking to you about this when you were a young cartoonist.
Yes.
I made my own. I very consciously made a style for myself when I was, I think, 28. I had drawn as a kid, and I'd always kind of had trouble figuring out my style. Not that I could draw in a million styles. I was just self-conscious, and drawing for myself, like whatever amused me was great. But like as soon as I was drawing for someone else, I worried that something didn't look quite right, and that's the enemy of having a style is self-consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to art school, and that really effed me up, and I started using a brush, and I'm not a brush person. I can't tell you why. Someone else could tell you why. It's something to do with me drawing with my fingers and not my wrist, I think, but brushes just take the humor out of what I'm doing and the quickness.
Mm-hmm.
And so after making my first book, basically with a brush, I'm trying to remember, the Kolinsky Sable. It's made with only the back. I'm so sorry, anyone who's vegan. The back, only the tip of the tail. It's the fanciest brush that I could afford at the time.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's the tail of.
So sad animal.
I don't know. I remember going to the art store and they're like, it's the tip, only the tip of the tail.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay, what? I didn't want to know. Okay, so then when I was 28, I got together in my head some artists that I really admired, including, Brian Ray, who does the modern love illustrations in the New York Times, this comic duo in France named Rupert and Mulot, Jason Polin. There were like a number. I'm trying to think who. There were definitely also women, but I'm trying to think. And I thought about what I liked about each person's style and kind of consciously took it, and it was kind of like I wouldn't feel comfortable doing something like that now, like blatantly taking something from somebody now. Although I do notice myself taking things from people, and I don't censor it when I do, but I don't do it on purpose. But that was how I came up with it.
That just happens, you know.
Yeah.
In a world, you create art from what you see, and so.
I liked XKCD. I really examined really simple things. I realized I needed to get simple.
Mm-hmm.
How did
the simplicity of your art is just it speaks volumes. It's so beautiful.
Thank you. And then confidence comes once you start always drawing in the same style.
Mm-hmm.
I think the point of a style is to feel confident.
Mm-hmm.
Did you consciously develop a style?
I don't think so. I like most cartoons, drew from since I was a kid. And then, but in high school, I was extremely obsessed with drawing photorealistic. And I was like, only pencils and charcoal, and I would do these massive portraits where
Wow,
I needed them to look so perfect.
Were they funny when you look back at them? Were
No. Oh my god, no. I'm the biggest nerd. They were just fully just like celebrity portraits. Like I was just like, I love movies. Angelina Jolie is beautiful, and I would take everything out of Vanity Fair on all of Annie Leibovitz's photography, and I'd want to like recreate it. I'm embarrassed. It's fine. I still have them, and I got a lot of them signed by celebrities because I think I'm weird, but I don't draw like that anymore. But that was me in high school, and then I went to film school for college, so I didn't draw so much for several years. And then after college, I found myself sitting just at a daytime job, just doodling. And all of a sudden, I just, sort of became a cartoonist. But, like, it was just over years the weird thing of, like, I don't know, just kind of draw the way you draw for whatever reason. I have no idea why I draw the way I do, though. So I don't have a good answer.
Did it come out of the celebrity portraits?
No, I don't think so. I think the biggest thing was, like, I learned to draw by copying Snoopy and Charlie Brown and everything. My grandfather was golfing buddies with Charles Schultz, and I know it's cool. I didn't meet him, everyone else did. But I know his wife. But we had a lot of originals around the house, just like big sketches addressed to my mother from Sparky, and so I was like, Sparky, the one and only. And I was fascinated with them and wanted to draw like him. So I know my eyes are still like Charlie Brown eyes. Like,
oh, interesting. Yeah, they totally are.
Totally do the Charlie Brown eyes.
I love the dots. Yeah.
I'm huge on dots.
Yeah, me too.
Dots are big. But then I think once I started submitting to the New Yorker, you just draw more and more and more, and you kind of get further into whatever way it is that you draw. And then drawing Murder Book took that like tenfold, because drawing a graphic novel or memoir is so different than drawing 10 gags a week or something. It's like drawing extensive pages and like drawing all day, and I think it just sort of made me a better artist in my own way. But it's really hard to draw that much. I like that you kind of went between pencil and pen in the book.
Oh yeah, I made a different style for each of the 3 sections. Mm-hmm. I'd intended to only work in the first style, which I consider to be my style, but it was hard for me to evoke the different moods of the different stories all in that style. That's kind of a childlike style, and for Abraham I made kind of an art school style with just like shaded pencil. And the last one, it's supposed to be futuristic. I was on a very tight deadline. I rewrote it all at the last minute.
Oh.
Would have preferred a more futuristic style, but it would have taken me years to make one. So I made do with using a futuristic technology of the iPad.
Yeah, it's very future.
Band-Aid dots.
I was wondering those dots. Okay,
Yeah.
I was gonna add,
I
was like, those dots are, nice. Okay, so final question for me before we go back to you guys is like, there's so much sex in the book, it's hilarious, and I love it, and obviously to me, there is, but there isn't. There is, but there isn't. Babies are coming left and right.
Yeah, they come out of there's no.
There's not actual sex in the book.
In the book.
No, but there is.
There's
like
begetting.
Yeah.
Abraham begat Isaac.
So again, I remember I'm not religious. So what did you change, if anything?
I left the language as it was, and I just illustrated it.
Okay. That's it then. I was trying to get dirty stories out of you, obviously.
I've never seen that happen, but I know it did.
It had to.
Yeah. My baby was born that way.
Nice. That's good to know.
When I told you I was pregnant, that was just for fun. It's for show.
Yeah. It's all an act, really. Any other questions? Are we sure? Yes. Okay. You. You.
You said you got through, realized the story was about God, and then you realized that 2/3 of the book wasn't actually about God. Did you sign on to write the book without really knowing the whole story all the way through?
I knew it, like I'd read it, and I was shocked that I didn't. And well, my editor asked me if it was something I would like to do, and it was, because I really like the Torah, and all he knew, the reason he was asking me is that he loved that character, and so I just we were talking about it as if it were a book about this character, and I'm actually very bad at like putting 2 and 2 together sometimes, so yes, that's what happened.
Are you working on anything new, or is that private information?
I have 3 new books that I'm gonna make with Random House.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I've been working on the pitches for a really long time, and it's like such a relief to get to finally work on a book again. I haven't been working on a book in a year, I think. And
Yeah.
it's hard. So I mean,
That's interesting.
it's
So I was
hard.
gonna ask you about so just as you're in the process of starting the next book, and like I have this feeling of like, oh my god, I gave that book so much energy. How could I possibly start again with this new thing and like find this new journey? And I'm having
Yeah.
a very hard time entering it.
I feel like I know. Well, also, I need something to do that will get me to not be taking care of my baby.
Sure, yeah.
But I feel like I'm better and better.
Mhm.
It's like hard for. I don't think it's hard for you in the same way that it's hard for me in that I couldn't like get into telling a story,
Mhm.
and I was better at it in this book than in Passing for Human. But like I'm so full of like a million forms of doubt. Like how do I do boxes? Like where is there speech bubbles? Like that it's very like that adds to how hard it is to tell a story anyway, especially if you're not someone who's used to making book length work. And I feel like as I practice, it's easier and easier to just get lost in something, and all the little questions that get in the way of the big questions are less. So I feel
You're smooth sailing. That's beautiful.
it won't be smooth sailing,
I'm
but
gonna tell other people that though. Any final questions before everyone can get their book? And that's it. Well, thank you guys so much for coming tonight. Liana is literally incredible work. And you I don't know.
Give one more round of applause for Liana. Thank you all for coming. Make sure to check out our website calendar. We have a lot of events coming up in the next few months. We'll be really excited to see you again. Don't forget to get your signed copies of Liana's and Hilary's books. And maybe if you ask nicely, they'll personalize them for you. Okay, good night everyone. Thank you.